When we look at a striking piece of textile art like this indigo cloth, our eyes naturally focus on the deep blue color, but the pattern is actually the negative space. The design is the area protected from the dye. This protection is called a resist. By applying intense compression to natural fibers, usually cotton, we create a physical barrier that stops the liquid from absorbing. Look at this cross-section of cotton fabric. When wrapped tightly with raffia, the threads are crushed together. As liquid dye washes over, it saturates the loose outer edges, but cannot penetrate the tightest point. The inner core remains white. This is compression depth. Creating precise, professional textile designs depends entirely on controlling the physics of this hidden, dry space. The most common point of failure occurs when students underestimate the mechanical force required to maintain that dry space during the dyeing process. Here is a side-by-side comparison of two binding techniques. On the left, the fabric is tied with standard thin sewing thread. On the right, the bundle is wrapped in a solid plastic barrier and clamped down with thick rubber bands. Notice how the thin thread fails under the liquid. The dye bleeds underneath the weak wrap, creating a faded, fuzzy edge known as dye creep. By contrast, the plastic and thick rubber bands on the right block the moisture entirely, resulting in razor-sharp lines. Maximizing compression depth is a requirement. Failing to lock out the liquid means any geometric shape will bleed out into a disorganized blur. Once you control the structure of the bind, you face the second challenge of textile design, layering multiple colors. To do this without ruining the fabric, we follow the law of overdying. This flowchart maps out the necessary color hierarchy. Because dye is additive, you must always progress from lightest to darkest, starting with yellow, moving to red, and finishing with blue. Breaking this sequence creates what we call the brown problem. The color wheel shows us that layering complementary colors directly on top of each other, like dipping a red fabric into a green dye bath, neutralizes the colors and turns the cotton into a muddy brown. Let's test this logic. Imagine you have a piece of fabric dyed yellow. It has one white ring tied off. Your goal is a final design featuring an orange background, the original white ring, and a new yellow ring. Take a look at this fabric. What specific action must you take right now before dropping this yellow cloth into a red dye bath? You have to apply new ties directly over the yellow sections. By creating a secondary resist layer, you lock in the yellow color. When submerged in red, the exposed yellow turns orange, while the newly bound sections stay yellow. Multicolored patterns are the direct result of following this sequence and using physical barriers to protect specific areas from each subsequent bath. Random crumpling techniques are fine for practice, but professional textile design requires predictability, especially when creating repeating patterns for traditional wear. This diagram demonstrates a technique called geometric folding. The fabric is folded into straight accordion-style pleats, then folded again into sharp triangles. Finally, the stack is clamped tightly between two pieces of wood. This creates perfect repeating symmetry. Even with precise folds and crisp lines, the piece isn't finished until the dye is chemically locked into the cotton fibers. Here are the 4 pillars of a finished professional product. First, select 100% natural cotton. Second, maximize your compression depth with tight, strong bindings. Third, follow the light to dark color sequence. And fourth, apply a chemical fixative. Rinse in cold water until it runs clear, and iron flat. Mastering the physics of the bind, the sequence of color, and the chemical fix transforms raw cotton into intentional art. For more lessons across all your subjects, visit yaka.cc.